really stepping up and just continuing to learn about relationships every time I ran into an issue, like the mindset was more like, okay, how do I learn about this? Like, this hurts, but I can figure this out. Like, there's a skill here I'm missing.
Welcome to Love Stories, a relationship podcast for successful women, where we talk about love, dating, relationships, and how great love stories are made. Whether you're searching for the one, you're madly in love, or simply curious about romantic relationships, this podcast is for you. I'm Charlene Byars. Each week, you'll hear from women, couples, and experts, and all the ins and outs on how to create your own love story. I am so passionate about this subject, and I'm so excited to share all the things that you can apply to create a beautiful love story of your own. Cheers to great love. Welcome back to the Love Stories podcast. I'm your host, Charlene Byars. I was recently talking to a client who's been dating this guy for a few months, and she's really attracted to him, and she likes him. I asked her a couple of questions, and one of the questions I asked her is, do you feel safe? Emotionally safe with him? Do you feel that you can share with him and be vulnerable? She explained to me that they have great chemistry, but that she doesn't feel emotionally safe with him. She doesn't feel that he's truly emotionally available. And what I explained to her was, I just want to say this. It doesn't matter how much you have in common. It doesn't matter how attracted you are to him or how much money he makes or how similar your life goals are. If you don't feel emotionally safe with the man, none of that matters. Without emotional safety, all the chemistry in the world is just a distraction from the deeper truth. You might be able to build a relationship temporarily, but you can't sustain it. It doesn't work that way because chemistry and compatibility without safety is just a fleeting illusion of intimacy. It's not true intimacy. It's not safety. And you need to feel completely yourself and be vulnerable with the man you're falling in love with. And if you are single, make sure that you have both. It's really important not to waste your time on the wrong man. And it's really important that you feel emotionally safe with him. Let's talk about the tip of the week, which is conversations to have before commitment. Ladies, dating is an opportunity to get to know different men and see who they are over time. Entering into the right relationship for you and committing to one man is different from dating. Dating is for you to get to know different men. And it's very important that you are clear-headed so you can evaluate men and set your relationship up for success. And if you're really liking a guy and you're thinking that he might be the one, it's important to ask real questions. Don't just assume that you know what he would say, and don't commit to a man until you know exactly where he stands and you know that both of you are on the same page and share the same values. And most of all, always ask yourself, do I feel emotionally safe with him? Is he emotionally an available man? Ask questions about things that are important to you, like health, faith, and lifestyle. Here are 3 important questions to ask a man if you're choosing to commit to him. 1. How do you like to spend your money? 2. Do you see yourself as a parent? 3. How do you address issues and conflict? Remember, this is your life, and committing to a person is a very big deal. So make sure you know who he is and that he wants the same relationship you do. Ask questions, ladies. I am so thrilled to welcome my next guest to the show today. Robyn Michon is a dating and relationship coach. Her journey started when she realized that she had no idea how to have healthy relationships. She never been taught. She says, I attach to people way too soon. I lose myself trying everything I could to make the relationship work, only to have it fail or still be unhappy. I didn't know why I couldn't get over someone or how to get them to love me. It was awful. And I knew I didn't want to live like that. Relationships were too important to me to keep doing them how I was doing them. It was causing too much pain, and I knew I had to figure out what I was doing wrong. Robyn teaches research based relationship skills with a warmth and understanding that comes from real life experience. This was such a powerful conversation on how our childhood can shape how we do relationships and what we think of them and how we show up. And the beautiful thing is, we still have a choice to do things differently and to create a different outcome for ourselves, regardless of our experiences or what we learned or didn't learn. Things don't have to be that way. We can still find great love and be in relationships that we desire and create what we want. Oh, this was so good. With no further ado, Robyn Michon.
Well, hello, Robyn. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I have been looking forward to our conversation today. So I
Oh,
just want
me
to
too. Me
say
too.
thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for, being a guest on this show, the show about love and relationships and all the things. And I know that's what you also do, and that's how you help people. And we're going to get into that today. But I also was thinking about like how I wanted to start this podcast. And I was actually driving and I was like, I want to ask Robyn this question. It was on my heart. So I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna start here. Okay.
Sounds
Robyn,
good.
in your opinion, what do you think is or why people having such a harder time, finding love these days than what we would expect, say like back in the day? What is going on, Robyn? Why do you feel, in your opinion, people are having a harder time finding love?
Yeah. So I think the difference is we have different expectations. So before it was very much about like just kind of finding a partner, and there often weren't that many options because we weren't exposed to as much. And it was just like you find a partner, you get married, you stay together.
Yes.
And for women, especially the financial component, like I think about my grandma, she, lived on a farm. She couldn't have left. So when we're in those situations, like, I don't think that they found love. Like, I wouldn't say that, but I think we look at that and think they did. And then we kind of compare it to now where it's like, oh, but I'm this age and I haven't found love. And they had this, some of those people did have great love, but I think a lot of the times it actually wasn't that easy and it wasn't that good. And they were just more stuck. Whereas now we don't have to be like, we want relationships that are really fulfilling, really meaningful, really connected. And if we don't have that, we're willing to leave. And I think before we weren't willing to leave as much.
Oh, that's so good. That's spot on, right? Like, before it was actually different. It wasn't necessarily, I love that you said that actually. Let's talk, because I think the misconception, a lot of us now, we think, oh, love was better than or greater than or whatever that is, but not necessarily people were actually in relationships because they loved each other. Maybe the love came later. It was more out of like, this is what we do, right? This is what, this is the next step. And now, is it just, do we have just too many choices? I mean, which I guess is good too, right? And is that another thing that you think is kind of blocking us right now because there are so many different expectations now?
Well, I think that I think it's both.
Okay.
So I think that in some ways, I think it's good that we have these choices because we're not settling. Like if I think about my family line kind of, right? It was like my grandma, that was not a good relationship. And then my mom, the same thing, because we weren't ever taught relationship skills. So I think that's half of it. We just literally aren't taught how to do relationships, or we're taught, but we're taught poorly is what happens, right?
Yeah.
I think that that's a part of it. There's that half. And then the other half is this like fairy tale idea where you see this guy and you fall in love and it's supposed to be perfect. And like, that's just not what happens actually.
Right.
And so it's hard for people because it's both, right? Like it's hard to know, like, am I settling here or am I asking for too much? Or like, should I have this? Like, it's just hard to know because we're not really taught. We're given these extreme examples, right? Of stuff where we've only seen poor relationships, or else it's like like a prince.
Or like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or you see relationship that they look like everything is just perfect, but reality is
Mhm.
we actually don't really know what happens behind closed doors, right? Like we
I
just don't
think
know.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you said that, because I think that's one of the biggest things is people don't know. Like that's like you probably find too when you get people on calls, what they're saying to you isn't what like they don't- they're not feeling
Yes.
safe to like share that with their friends, and they
Yes.
don't want to like talk bad about their partner. So
Yes.
it looks perfect on the
Yes.
outside.
Yes.
But then you hear and it's like they've actually gone through struggles, which is good. That's how you get better. But they've
Yep.
gone through stuff and you don't see, like, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. So it's so easy to idealize
It
and think
really
it's
is,
just
isn't it? Like, right,
easy.
right. What do they say? Look at the Joneses. You're like, oh, well, look at them. They have this great relationship, but that's not necessarily true. But that's not
Yeah.
necessarily true. No, that's,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, that is such a good point. Well, let me ask you this then. Take me back, Robyn. Like, take me back to your childhood and
Mhm.
what was life like when you were a child? How did you grow up? Did you grow up with a mother and a father? Did you have siblings? Where did you grow up? What was life like?
Yeah. So I'm from Canada. So I live in like a small city kind of ish.
Canada.
And I grew up with both of my parents, like very middle class, like both like worked normal jobs kind of thing. But both of them, and they divorced when I was maybe in high school ish.
Okay.
But both of them came from families where there was just like very pretty major issues.
Okay.
So like my dad's family is like there's lots of just like trauma and mental health, like pretty bad.
Okay.
And then my mom's family, my mom passed away when my mom was like 20 or something. She had cancer. So she passed away maybe even younger, maybe 18 or something.
Okay.
So, and my mom had a bunch of, there was 14 kids in that family. So those two factors, like, even though her mom was there, her mom
Yeah.
and dad was there, but like dads just weren't involved and he wasn't an involved parent. So they both kind of had like not great, right? Neither of them learned great relationship skills. So then these two people come together
I
and they
know.
care about the kids. Yeah. And like, they love them, but like they didn't have the skills. Like they didn't, how do you know what to parent when you weren't parented? Like, or when what you learned was really poor. So then they
Can
passed
I
a
just
lot of that
interrupt you
stuff
real quick?
on.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate you saying that right now because I do talk
Mhm.
about that a lot. Like, when we talk about our childhood and we talk about our parents and just kind of where you're at in your mindset now. Some of us look
Yeah.
back and we put fault on the parents and we blame parents. Some of us look back and we don't. And whatever that is, I truly believe this. And I'm not saying that like there aren't parents out there that are not nice, good people. Okay, I got that. But I've noticed for the majority of the
Mhm.
parents out there, it's so spot on what you just said that they also didn't have the skills. They also grew up in certain environments. And the further we go back, it's even less than what we have available now. So their
Yeah.
abilities and what they did was truly sometimes, and I know it did affect us as kids, right? Of course it did. But
Yeah.
it truly at times it's like they didn't even know. Like you said, they did the best that they can. So keep talking about that. That's really important.
Yeah. So, okay. So that has been a journey.
Yeah.
Like how I talk about it now, where it's fairly objective. Like I'm
Yeah.
just literally, they had bad childhoods, they passed that on. That was work. And a
Yes.
lot of that work helped me in relationships and came after I was in good relationships. Because once I learned, like, oh, what should a good relationship look like? I realized that my parents didn't act in those ways.
Yeah.
And so that realization and that like grief, the
Yes.
grief that's around that, when you actually look and you're like, oh, I didn't, not in a blame way, right? Not
Yeah.
in like, this is why, but like the grief of like, it's just really actually very sad that neither of them had good, the childhoods weren't great. And then that got passed on because I know that, they didn't want that, but it's what happens.
It's what happened, right? It's kinda like
Yeah.
it's the reality. I look
It's the
back.
reality.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is the reality. Like, I look back at my childhood, and I love my parents, and my parents are cool. They're older now, but they're cool now. But when
Yeah.
I grew up, oh my goodness, you know what I tell them? I'm like, "It seems like I was in a jungle, you guys." Like, I felt like I was like, "What were you guys doing?" Because it was just so, dysfunctional. They weren't together and they both ended up like my mom married, the worst guy ever. And then my
Yeah.
dad was like, he loved all the women. And it was just like all this stuff that was happening. My parents always had good hearts, but man, when it came to raising us, me and my brother, oh my goodness, we got it all. We did. We got it all. So that really also for me, for so many years, affected me. And I didn't know, Robyn, like I didn't know either. And I didn't realize how that really affected me when it came to romantic relationships and when it came to, my confidence, my boundaries. Just, I didn't know any of that stuff. Like I literally felt like I came from a jungle.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like people don't realize how their family is affecting them.
Yes.
Like that's the biggest part is like how if you're struggling in relationships, there's a reason. And it's not like because you're not good enough or not pretty enough or like there's no good people out there. That's not, it's probably your childhood. Like very likely there's something happening there that you picked up some patterns and are like unconsciously repeating or unconsciously thinking, like just the thoughts that you have, right?
Yeah, that's so good. Yes.
That it really shifts like how you show up, but it's all learned, right? Like both of us are saying, right? It's all learned.
So
like,
what was that? Yeah, it is learned. So tell me then, like, how was that for you when you grew up? Because you had you were talking about when I interrupted you, you were talking about, I know, because like it's so good. I was like, oh, I gotta ask her this question. So where I left you was you were talking about how both of your parents really came from, tough childhood, really tough childhood. And how did that affect you? And did you have brothers and sisters? And did you say that their parents stayed together or they divorced when you were in high school?
Yeah, they divorced when I was in high school, but like, and very abruptly, like there was like an incident and then they split. So it wasn't like a conscious, like, oh, this isn't working, like even in that I could tell. So I say that because it's like one of the things now that it helps is just when you recognize your patterns. So for me, I have a hard time letting go of things. Like I want to make it work. And both my parents did that. Like they're super unhappy, and they just kept trying to make it work.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
When it wasn't working. So then there's an event that happens where they end up breaking up and it's worse because they needed it to be so extreme. And then I kind of held on to that, right? It's like, no, I need to like make it work. And knowing that now as an adult is good because it's not that you never, like, I still have that tendency, but if I see it, okay, we're fine.
Yes.
Like I can tell when I'm doing it, so then I can kind of do it less, right?
Right.
But that was one of the things, just make it work. No matter what, you have to just make it work, right? And I think a lot of us have that passed on. Like that was an old
I think it was. I think you're spot on this. I think it is like, and especially, the messaging that we always got, right? Like if you're in a relationship, if you get married, no matter what, make it work. And I remember growing up and seeing very toxic relationships and I had no idea about anything. Right. And I remember seeing toxic relationships and I remember seeing, what I would call then is machismo. I'm Cuban. So, what I would call then is machismo men. And they were, cheating on their wives and blah, 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 blah. And it was almost like it was normal. And then the women, I could see these women just being destroyed, crying and all this, but they still had to like stick it through. And I was like, what is that about? I mean, it was just bizarre to me. It was so bizarre to me, but I honestly, can I tell you the truth? I didn't know anything different. I honestly thought that was the normal.
Yeah. And I've heard that culturally actually from like a Latino client that it was the same, like it is that's a thing. So many of these things we don't realize in relationships, a lot of I think everything of it is learned, honestly. Like you're right. There's just patterns that we repeat over and over. And the worst part is like, I think it could sound like we're like, oh, those men shouldn't do that and they're terrible. But like what happens is when the women like put up with it, it doesn't help the men either. It doesn't, they don't get that kind of sign of like, hey, actually, this isn't okay. We're not doing this anymore. This needs to change. Like they're just really sad and hoping it changes, but there's no actual steps to change.
That's so good. There's no actual step. It's kind of like we just accept it. And then, because it does. And then in that scenario, and I think in any scenario when it comes to, relationships, it's two people, right? Like we both have choices. And I understand like if you are in relationships like that, like, your mindset is probably like not in a positive, in a good mindset. So you probably are thinking that that's just how it should be. But the reality is that you are as a person playing a part in that relationship because you continue on allowing it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think like a big part of the work we both do is helping people have those choices because I think I actually have been surprised with clients and then looking back at myself is like we think it's like, oh, there's choice here, but
Mhm.
our choices are so limited. Like my
Yes.
choices used to be I stay in this or else I'm awful and I failed. Like there was
Yes.
that
Yes.
was it, right? It's like I'm horrible and
Yep.
I'm not good enough for him to change and there's something wrong with me. But like that was kind of all that would happen. Like I didn't know there was this other place where it was like, no, he has to be willing to change too. And that doesn't his willingness not to change doesn't mean that I'm not pretty enough or I'm
Yes.
not good enough or whatever, right? But like when we don't know that, we just get stuck in these patterns. Like we don't even know there's other options.
No,
That's
we
what I
don't know. So okay, so keep taking me back then. That's really good. So
yeah.
you were young and your parents get a divorce, like you said in high school. So
Yeah.
what age, looking back now, were you when you would say you actually got your first serious boyfriend?
Yeah. Oh, the word serious really threw me.
Because we
I
have
don't
so many
know.
little ones. Robyn, come on, you know what I'm talking about? Like, like more of a like, okay, we're in a long-term relationship now.
Well, okay, so what happened with me?
Yeah,
So
let's hear it.
I really thought that like one of the things that was really passed on, not on purpose, but like through my mom's,
Okay.
through both my parents, right? So my mom was very body conscious, which most moms are that age, right? Where
Yes.
you have to look a certain way, you have to look good. It's important to look a certain way. And then my dad had that too, where it was like, oh, if you look good, then people will want you.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I thought that meant that like I needed to attract a guy with my looks and with my body.
Got it.
And that
Same.
created a lot of issues. Yeah. Like when you're like young, that's not good. Like it
No,
creates
it's
a lot
not
of
good.
issues, right? No, don't do that.
I remember too,
Right?
my mom was always like that. Like she was always
Yeah.
talking about like being on a diet and
Hmm.
staying in shape and you better look good because if you don't look good, another woman will get your man. I'm like, what? No, I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
And I love. Can I just say something though? Like honestly, mom, if you're listening to this, I love you so much, and you are an amazing mom. And thank you for doing
Yeah.
such a great job. But like she didn't know, she didn't have, she didn't also have support from her mother, and
Yeah.
so she always had a good heart, but she made all the wrong choices. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. But I want to do say something like she's grown, she's done the work now as a woman,
Yeah.
she's the best grandma in the whole wide world. And because of our experiences, her and I have been able to grow together, and I
Yeah.
feel like I was able to, break the generational bond that we have with how the women did our stuff in the past. So I'm not talking bad about you, mom. I love you. I think you're amazing. It's just how it was when I was younger. But anyway, so yes. So my mom was always talking about like your appearance, and she always looked so good. And I honestly thought from the bottom of my heart that that's how you got a man.
Yeah. And I think that's a thing, like when you say like, that's what, and I don't even know that my mom would say that conscious. Like, I think it was just one of
Yeah.
those thoughts that you just
Yes.
believe because it's like, well, men want sex. And so I
Yes.
need to be sexy. Like, it was just that,
That's
right?
my mom. Yeah. She didn't know.
Yeah. And
Same
that was
thing.
me. Like, I had no idea until like I kept, like being like, oh, if I'm attractive, they'll want me. And then using that kind of, you know what I
Yes.
mean? Cause like
Yes.
using that of like, oh, well, I'm sexy, I'm flirty, I'm,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
And then having guys just leave and being like, what the heck is happening?
What
Because I
happened?
did all the things. Why are they leaving? There must be something. I must not be attractive enough. I must be whatever. So that led to then, and just like very low self-esteem, because if
Yes.
our self-esteem is based on what we look like, it's like, unless you won the lottery and you look like, like Kim Kardashian, that's another story, right? So anyway, I ended up getting pregnant then when you say the serious thing, it was not that serious, but I ended up getting pregnant when I was like 17
Yeah.
and then like ending that relationship because it just wasn't a good person.
Okay.
Like
So you were
very,
in a
very not.
relationship around 17 years old, and the person just
Yeah.
wasn't, it was not good.
It was not good.
It
Yeah,
was not
not
good.
good. And like when I look back, one of the things too is like looking back, you don't even realize how not good
I
it
know.
was sometimes. Like
Yes.
you look back and you're like, oh man, I just, it's like you wish someone would have stepped in and been like, hey, these things aren't okay, but we don't know. We don't know. So we
Robyn,
make bad
that's so
choices.
smart. Oh my
Like,
God, that's so good you said that too. Because like you just don't know, right? Like
mm-hmm.
you think it's different, you think it's okay. And I was in that same scenario. I had a boyfriend and you know what? And he's my first son's father, and he's awesome now. And
Yeah.
and it's been so long. He's my first husband and we're friends and it's cool. But back then, you know what I mean? He wasn't awesome because he was young and I was young
Yeah.
and I was very, very naive and he really, 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 really liked the women.
Mhm.
And I got pregnant, Robyn. I got pregnant when I was 18 years old,
Yeah.
3 months before I graduated high school. So
Yeah.
I knew, but back then my self-esteem was very low.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. And that's why it's just like, I really feel like like when I think about who I was at that time, I've read through journals and the body image stuff was like, I looked so good, and I'm like, I need to lose weight. I need to whatever.
Yes.
And like, just, that person just wanted to be wanted so badly
Yeah.
by someone
Yeah.
that, anyone that gave any inkling of that, it was like, oh, I need this person. I need this person. Right. And trying to make it work. Like it just creates this mess, right?
Yes.
And then like fast forward and I'm like, oh, this keeps happening.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it was
So then
like
you go forward and you're like, okay, but I thought it was the guy, the one guy. And
totally,
you're like, okay,
totally you
so
think it's the
I know it's
guy.
him. You know what I mean? Like, okay. And then you find
Yeah.
yourself in these type of what patterns with men?
Yeah. And like, I mean, it looks a little different, but it
Okay.
keeps, you're just like, it's where you just keep being like it shouldn't be this awful. Like when you describe those women crying and stuff and their husbands are out with that, it's like relationships aren't meant to be that hard. Like that's
Yes.
not, it shouldn't be that there's hard, but that's not the kind of hard,
That's
right?
not
It's
the
like
kind of hard. No.
no, it should be like hard, like, oh, we're opening up and being more vulnerable and
Yes.
learning about each other. That's the kind of hard, not this like everything's awful. I'm,
Everything's awful,
anxiety ridden
toxic, we're
and
fighting, all the things. I love that
yeah,
you said that too, because my line, Robyn, is always like,
yeah,
truly, like I really feel this, like romantic, like if we're gonna get in romantic relationships, like for an example, so I have a
uh-huh,
17-year-old daughter, and she's in her very first relationship. And I told her, I said, listen, you're 17 years old. To be in a romantic relationship, to have a little boyfriend, okay?
uh-huh,
It should be literally fun, exciting. It's like your best friend. They shouldn't
yeah,
be toxic. There shouldn't be the hardness because then that's not how it should be. Like relationships, I truly feel this like Robyn, like should be where we come to enhance our life, not detract from
yeah,
it. Because life is hard. Life is hard. So your relationship should be, where you get to have connection and fun and growth and all the good stuff. All the good stuff. Yes, you're gonna have disagreements. I
yeah.
get it. I get it. And that's an opportunity to grow and learn each other. But you can have disagreements and it doesn't have to be toxic or so hard, Yeah. I love that you said that.
Totally. And like, I love that you said that to her because it's such a good guidepost because it's true, right? Like,
Yes.
and it's not that like you said, it's not that there can't be issues, but like, it
No,
shouldn't be where you're super like upset all the time and what, like,
exactly.
there's different levels. Like, it shouldn't be awful, awful. It should be
Mm-mm.
mostly good. Like,
Mostly good.
especially when they're 17,
Yes.
right? But like,
Yes.
looking back, it's like, that wasn't like and then you got to one of those things is those like super high highs and then the low lows is like a big sign for me now. Like I don't like if I'm having those like, oh my God, this person, I need to be with them. They're the best thing in my life. That's a red flag, which I
That's a
didn't
red
know
flag.
before, right?
Talk about
Like
that real
it should
quick.
be balanced.
Yeah, talk
Yeah.
about why that's a
Well,
red flag.
yeah, so that was one of the things before is like I would be so drawn and it would feel like I'm only happy when I'm with them. But what was
Mm.
happening is like they would almost create that because then when you're away, you feel awful. So then you think the only way to feel better is to get them to talk to you again. So then
Yes.
you're creating these ups and downs instead of like having boundaries, having conversations. This behavior is okay. This behavior is not okay. It's like my whole emotional world revolved around, if we were good in the relationship.
Why
And
do
that's
we
a
do that, Robyn?
problem.
Why do we do that?
Oh, I think oh okay. I think that okay, so for me, it was really learned.
Okay.
So this was like probably the biggest work that I did is
Okay.
realizing that how I was feeling in a moment was coming from what I was thinking.
Oh,
So if I'm sitting there and I just remember, okay, so I was dating this guy
okay.
and I thought he was great. Like he like had a business and I was like, we're going to build a life together. This is my husband. I'm going to build an empire with. That's what
Okay.
I was thinking,
Like
right?
you
I'm
were
going
like,
to like,
I'm all in. I got this. Yeah.
he's great. Yeah. He wasn't as all in though. So, he would like not be available or be busy, or he'd be like, I don't know if this is working. And in my mind, I was devastated because of what I was making it mean. I wasn't
Oh,
thinking
yes.
if he doesn't want to build with me, that's okay. Someone else will. Like, like there's many, many men in the world. There'll be other people who want to build with me. I made it mean, well, there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough.
Yes.
I'm never going to find love. Nothing's ever going to happen. And it was very, very, very heavy. And I thought that the only way to get rid of those heavy feelings and the anxiety around like, does he like me? Is this going to work out? What's going to happen? I thought, well, I needed him to solve it. Like if he calls me and says it's
Oh,
okay, I'll be okay.
okay.
But then it would make it worse because then I'd call him and I would like kind of push him away in that energy, to
Yes.
be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was
Yeah.
putting so much on him. So when I learned that, like, oh, actually, I can feel better by what I'm thinking. Like if I tell this horror story basically about how I'm, not good, he's going to leave, everything's awful. It's
Right.
like watching a movie and I'll feel awful. But if I'm thinking about something else, that was really my clue in. I was changing. I'm not handy at all. I can't fix cars, but I
Okay.
had to change a light on my car.
Okay.
And so it took a whole of my mental capacity
Yeah.
to change this light, right? And I'm sitting there changing the light when I'd been devastated like 15 minutes before.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, when I'm not thinking about that, I'm not devastated. Nothing's changed, right? Like he hasn't called me. He hasn't reassured me. We're still on the rocks.
Yes.
But I was okay. And I was like, okay, like there's something here. Like that
There's
was my first
something
moment of
there.
like,
That's so
mhm,
good.
yeah, like I can be okay no matter what's happening in the relationship. Whoa. Like I didn't know, right? And then that gives you so much power because I don't have to make someone want me that doesn't want me because I can be okay no matter what like it's not that I'm not sad, but like I'm not devastated.
Yeah, exactly. You're not
It's so different.
that's so different because it's not
Yeah.
controlling your mind because you are actually
Right.
realizing like I get to control my mind. I literally get to decide how I want to think and how I want to look at this and change. You know what
Yeah.
I call it? I'm always like, I tell the kids, I'm always like, we're going to change the channel. Let's change that channel. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Change the channel because you have that
Yeah.
ability. Because if you want to look at
Mhm.
something over and over and over again, you're going to feel that. And if you want to be like, nope, I'm going to change the channel. You know what else I call this? When we're in the negative, I've said this a couple times on
Yeah.
the show. You're going to love this one. When the negative voice is like, oh my God, where's the guy? What is he doing? I can't believe this. I call it the itty bitty shitty committee.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
To allow us
Totally.
I love that you're saying that, to allow
Yeah.
us to realize that we do have control over where we want to put our energy, like what we want to think about. So what
Yeah.
started happening? Okay, so you get this realization. This is so good. Okay, so you find yourself in like these patterns with guys, even though they might show up a
Yeah.
little differently, but this happens. You guys,
Yeah.
you know what we're talking about. You know how like you're like with a person and things don't work out. So you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do it different next time. And then you meet somebody else and they might look different and blah, 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 but they end up being kind of like in the same relationship again. You're like, how did that happen? you know? So when you,
Well,
what, tell me what?
yeah. And like the compounding failure, because like I said at the beginning, I had this thing where I'd try to make it work even when it wasn't working. Like I
When,
didn't even want it. But it's like with those, you don't even want it. Like your logic brain is
yeah.
like, this is awful. But your emotion side is just like, no, make it work. I have to make this work. I have to be okay. Right.
Yes.
And so as long as I had that, then if someone would leave, it would be that urgency to find someone new right away. Out of like, I don't think there's anything wrong with dating right away.
Okay,
but when
yeah.
we're doing it from like, I'm not good, I need someone, like it feels different, right? It feels very anxious and
Totally.
that's where like all of my energy was going into it.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
it's hurting other lives, like the other parts of my life, right?
Yes.
And so that's how I kind of knew, right? And so this realization of then, wait a second, like I can feel okay no matter what's going on in the relationship, then that just, it makes you kind of slow everything down. So then in the relationship, I'm not coming with this needy energy. Like I don't need them to fix things for me to be okay. So I could actually say like, hey, this doesn't work for me sometimes, right? And then they could actually communicate like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Let's figure this out. Or not, right? Like maybe they don't want to. Okay. And then I could kind of move on, which has made it so much like the data, it's just so much easier. Being in a
No, that's
relationship is so much
wow.
better.
It has to be so much better. So
Yeah.
so what happened then? Like, so you found yourself, back then, obviously you didn't know you were in these patterns, right? So you found yourself,
Yeah.
I know that fast forward, it's completely different now. So I'm taking you back to where, you had a different mindset back then. You didn't have the skills that you have now, Miss Robyn. And
Totally.
so
Yeah.
back then though, so when we take back, so I know, right now, so the listeners are listening right now, and a lot of our listeners are single women, and they
Mhm.
have had, some of them obviously, like all of us, had some good relationships that didn't work out and some bad relationships that didn't work out, but they're in a phase in their life right now that they are definitely looking for love again. But
Yeah.
but they're relating to what you're saying. So, in your story, when you were finding yourself, going into relationship to relationship, kind of like in that way, what
Yeah.
happened? What was the shift that happened with you that things started changing?
Yeah, so I think the thing for me and like
Yeah.
so I if like with attachment styles, I tend to be anxious attached. So that's
Okay.
that whole like we need to work on it, we need to work on it. With me, looking back, I really felt like I needed to be in different relationships to really because I didn't know what a good relationship looked like.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I would get in a relationship and sort of see like, oh, there's components of it are here. Like it just kind of went up and up and up. That's what I sort of did, little steps, right? Like
Okay.
oh, this is a little better, right? This is a little better. Oh, what can we learn here? Like, this is a little better. And
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
so much of it is skills because when
Yes.
I was in that energy of just like, I need to make you want me, like, I'm not okay. Like, all of my work was just working on that anxiety,
Okay.
basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I couldn't actually work on good communications. Like, looking back, I would try to read stuff on communication, but I couldn't apply it because my emotions were so heightened that didn't matter if I used the right phrase, they could tell that it was very anxious energy, right? So really stepping up and just continuing to learn about relationships every time I ran into an issue, like the mindset was more like, okay, how do I learn about this? Like this hurts, but I can figure this out. Like there's a skill here I'm missing instead of that idea of like, what's wrong with me? Not that I never, like sometimes I still have that thought,
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah. What's
does.
wrong with me? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But you can go back to that like, okay, wait, I know that relationships are a skill. So what skill am I missing here? Like what's going on, right? And maybe it is a communication thing, maybe it's more of an energy anxiety thing, like maybe it's a boundaries thing, learning all about that and really exploring like I find for me that my relationships just get better and better because of that constant exploration. So then what would happen after? So then I
Yeah.
was in some like longer term relationships
Okay.
that like one that I think about when I bought the condo that I live in now,
Okay.
I started ending relationships sometimes too, which I
Okay.
didn't do. Right. So it was like, it's a much gentler, like instead of this awful, we hate each other breakup,
Yeah.
it would turn into like, I care about you and respect you, but this isn't working.
Right.
Like what you want and what I want there, it's not matching.
Right.
And
We
there's
don't have
no
like our
support.
core
Mhm.
values the same. Like, you know what I mean? You got to have your
Yeah,
core, like you can have different opinions and all that, but definitely for relationship to work, you guys better make sure that you guys have the same type of core values. Like where are you guys going?
yeah,
What kind of relationship do we want to have? Like how are we going to do relationships? What are we going to do? Yeah, that makes sense.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so it would become more like that, where then it was still like, okay, this isn't working. And I was able to more move on instead of just staying stuck and stuck and stuck, or instead of like trying to make it work so hard that I'd lose myself and then have to recover and then end up in another bad relationship. Like it was turned into a lot more choice, right? There's just more like, I can figure this out. I can choose this. I'm figuring out what I want through these relationships.
Kind of like really like learning yourself too, like learning
Yeah.
what it is that I truly want. Were
Mhm.
you looking for at the time, were you wanting to, get married and settle down, or were you still not sure about that?
I still don't know. I'll be honest. I go back and forth because I think too it changes. Like I
Mm.
definitely saw so like my son's 20, he's almost 21. And
Nice.
so when he was young, that was another it's really just seeing these thoughts we have and how they're impacting us. So
Yes.
one of the thoughts I had was like, oh, I need to like have like a stable like a dad for him kind of
Okay.
like a
Yeah.
like
Role
well,
model. Yeah. A man. Right.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, like it should be this two-parent. And like looking back, that wasn't a useful thought for if people are out there that are single mom. It wasn't a useful thought. He never needed that. We were fine.
Yep.
Right. Actually, but like we just pull these thoughts in. And so now that I've like he's moved out, he's doing great on he's it's lovely. I don't know. Like part of me is like, do I need to get married? I like long-term relationships that are
Okay.
connected and shared. That's my primary, but like I don't know. Like I think it's so interesting because we get to define for everybody what we want. Like maybe
Exactly.
is marriage or
Exactly.
what even is marriage to people? Like what does it look like for different couples? It's different. And that's part of that journey is like, oh, I get to choose this.
Yes. Yes.
Whereas my grandma, it was like, no, this is what you get. Like really, right? And
Now
now we
that no,
get
you're gonna.
so
This is what you
many.
do. Like right. It's
Yeah.
more like this is what you do.
Yeah.
And you really position yourself, even though you found yourself earlier on, like we talked
Mhm.
about, like how you grew up and everything like that, and you realize, oh my goodness, I'm having these relationships that are just not working out. This is tough. This is hard. But you are also able to realize to figure out what is it that you actually want. And it wasn't necessarily that you have to get married, is that you
Yeah.
wanted, right, a long-term committed relationship where the relationship, where you guys are cool, everything's pretty much good. So that is what I want people to understand too. What
Yeah.
love looks like can be different than, what people are telling you what love looks like. Love is this, it's what you want for your life. And
Yeah.
if you are a person that doesn't want to, doesn't have the desire to get married, that's okay, actually. That's actually
Yeah.
okay. And if you are a person that wants to get married, and if you're a person you want to get married and have a very traditional marriage, that's okay too. Beautiful. So
Yeah.
I love that you were really learning and discovering and try to figure out what is it that Robyn wanted. What is good for
Yeah.
Robyn?
You know what else that really did, which was
Tell
so
me.
interesting to me, is like when I realized that I could choose what I wanted,
Yes.
it made other people not choosing me just make more like it just didn't feel as personal,
Oh, I
you
love
know?
that. Yeah, you weren't
Right?
so
Like
sensitive anymore.
no, because they just didn't it wasn't that they didn't want me. That's what it felt like, but it was more like the things that I want aren't aligning with the things that they want. That's all it is, right? It's not that like, when I thought they didn't want me, it was like, oh, they don't want Robyn. Like something's wrong with Robyn.
That's so good.
Versus like, no, this is what I want. This is what I expect in a relationship. Like this, and it's not unreasonable at all. And some people just don't want, like, I like a lot of closeness
Yes.
and a lot of like openness. That's just how I am. And so some people don't like that as much. That's okay. Right. Like
Oh,
everyone's
Robyn,
different.
let's talk about that for a second. So,
Mhm.
that's really good because if you are single and you are, getting to know different people, kind of like on this dating, you're learning, you're dating,
Yeah.
and I see this so often. So I want to talk about how we can break this pattern. So this is what I see so often, and this was me too. Um, you're dating, you're single, and you're kind of like, okay, I want love. I'm not sure. You're so in that phase, right? Then you
Yeah.
meet someone, and I would say this, a lot for women. You meet someone, and let's say at first, a lot of times, usually at first everything's great,
Holy.
wow, and
Yeah.
so then as time is going by, women start noticing, maybe he's not quite what I thought he would be, and they start kind of really noticing the little red flags, okay, the little red flags, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden the guy starts getting flaky, right? You're like, well, he was really in for the first couple of weeks, but now he's kind of flaky.
Yeah.
Sometimes, what is it, and how can we change this? That not necessarily at that point we really do want that person. It's almost like because now that person is rejecting us,
Yeah.
we think, oh, we're gonna win. We're going to get this person. And how disempowering is that for us women?
Oh yeah, and like you said, like it's like you see the red flags, but the second they don't want you, there's this like thing. I don't know. It just seems automatic where you're like, no, I got to make you want. Like we
Yes.
take it so personally, right? Instead of just what it is that they just aren't whatever. They're just
They're
not
just not,
available.
they don't want you anymore.
Yeah,
And it not necessarily has to do with you. So what
yeah,
advice do you want to, like, what would you give women that are kind of like in that? And I know there's layers here, but
yeah.
something to say that, if you find yourself like that, like if the guy is not pursuing you anymore, or showing you that he wants you,
Yeah.
what would you advise women to do?
So I think it's helpful to think about like relationships are something that we build with someone. It's something we build. So when we're dating, sometimes we see a profile or we meet a guy, whatever,
Okay.
and we're like, oh, he's my guy. Like I've totally done this,
Yeah,
right? He
I
looks
know him.
perfect
Yeah,
on
yeah.
paper. I meet him and he's charismatic and attractive. And I'm like, yes, he's mine. But that isn't how love works, actually. It's something you build. We build trust, we build knowing each other like over time.
Oh, I love that.
And so when you're telling this strong story, because that's what it's like that channel of like, this is my perfect guy, but you don't actually know him. We know that logically. You don't know someone until 3 or 6 months in, to be on, even longer sometimes, right? So when we're telling that strong story, we're forgetting that like what we actually want is someone who's building with us. And so if he starts being flaky, we don't want it because we want someone who's building with us. So that gives us kind of that empowerment where it's like, if I want someone who's building with me and he's not showing up that way, I have some options. Like I could just say like, hey, like I noticed you haven't been showing up as much. Like did something, like we can just ask, like
Yeah,
not like, aren't you coming? But like, maybe something actually happened or whatever.
yeah,
Maybe you just,
yeah, yep.
maybe it's their busy season for work and
Right. Good
in
point.
2 weeks it'll be fine. But we
Okay.
have that kind of, we can step back a little because we're like, well, I want someone who's building. If he's not building, then I don't want it, right? Instead
That's
of that,
so
like,
good.
I need to make him want me.
That's so good. So it really does come down to then really understanding what you're wanting, and really
Mhm.
understanding. So like, so like say for an example, so if you are a woman, like you just said, like wants to build with the man, wants to get married with a man,
Yeah.
wants a man to, also want you and you want him and pursue you, and both of you, be right there with one another. And if the guy's pulling away, you already have that core value. So you don't, like, I love that. You don't have to worry
Yeah.
about if he's pulling away or not. It's actually a gift because he's already showing you that you guys
Hmm.
are not going to be in alignment. He might be saying, certain words, making you feel all warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
But his actions are like showing you that he's not matching what he's saying. So,
I'm so glad you said the thing about actions because it's so true because I think that's where I got the most confused in
okay,
dating.
talk
Was
about
like
that.
these guys will say great, and they don't, what they're doing is they're avoiding conflict. Like when they
Okay,
pull away, instead of just telling you, hey, this isn't working for XYZ, they're trying to avoid it, which like people do, right?
okay, okay.
And so, yeah, their actions, like if they're, if they're like, oh yeah, we'll hang out, but they're not calling you, like, come on, like it seems obvious, but I just know because I'm sure you've done it too, right? Where
Yes,
you're
all
like,
the
oh, he's
time. They
being
say
sissy,
yes, yes, I love that. Like, so ladies, listen, like seriously. So Robin and I are just talking to you based on honestly, like our
Yeah,
experiences and like the experiences of our clients. And if a guy is saying all the right things, but his actions are not matching what he's saying, and it goes for women too, ladies. Like seriously, if we're all telling the
yeah,
guys all this stuff, but our actions are not matching our words, it's just words.
yeah,
Like really, because it needs to match. So if a guy's saying, "I'm
yeah.
so into you, girlfriend, I want to," da, 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 but he's not hearing from him. And if a guy's into you, ladies, let me say this too, Robin, seriously. Like if a guy's into you, he's gonna want to contact you every single day. He's gonna want to, text you, see what's up, if he's really into you. If he's like contacting you once a week, he ain't into you. Mm-mm.
No, and especially like I always, unless there's actually a legit reason, but I think too, what I would do is I would
Tell him.
forget like how I act.
Yeah.
So like, like if you like a guy,
Yes.
you're gonna answer his text and you're gonna make time for him. Right. But if you
Yes.
don't, sometimes you don't want to hurt his feelings. So you just kind of
Yes.
brush it off.
Yes.
And like, it's not personal. It's not like these guys are terrible for doing that. You've
Yes.
probably done the same thing, like most of us, right?
Yeah,
It's
well, of
like,
course.
Well, they'll get the hint, right? Like, which isn't, don't communicate, like, we shouldn't communicate like that, but like everyone does. So just realistically, we
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
think we know a lot of the time.
No, I think we do know. And you know what? And so I talk about like dating, and I talk about like what dating's for. And dating to me is truly an opportunity to meet different people
Yeah.
and in time to see who you really having true alignment with. Like who it is that you guys are having really alignment with. But if you're dating, I really believe this with all my heart. Like, take your time. Like, don't rush things because as
Mhm.
time goes by, right, Robyn, you're going to see people's true colors. And,
Yeah.
and that's to me, that's the beauty of like really taking your time when you're dating to see, okay, is he a jerk? Or no, he's not a jerk. Like,
It's so true. Because like it's true. Everyone's on their best behavior at the beginning of a relationship. Like
yes.
that's their best behavior. That's also useful. I've thought about
That's
that
the
too,
best
right?
behavior. It's like
Yeah.
anything else. Like, people are like, I said, listen, when you meet someone, right, Robyn, like this is how I think about it. When you
Yeah.
meet someone, that is truly, you guys hear me out. Hear me out. When you meet someone, that is truly the ceiling as good as it gets because people truly show up
Yeah.
their best self. It's like when you're going to an interview or when you're meeting somebody, that's not
Yeah.
faking it. That's not being on. That's just really like showing up your best self. Okay. But the reality is it does take time to see if that person is really going to stay in that level, right? Like stay in that level.
Yeah.
And I always tell women, I say, so what you see truly is what you're going to get. Like how people are acting and how they're showing up is they're showing you who they are. So
Yeah.
believe them.
Yeah,
Believe
no, it's
them.
so true. Yeah. Like, and the thing is too, you actually want it to be like that. So like in
Yes.
relationships, when we're building trust, it would be weird if I just like trauma dumped right now and told you all of the most personal things that I haven't
So weird.
processed and like everything I've shared, I'm very comfortable with and have processed and,
Yes.
and totally
Yes.
fine with, right? So it's the same on a date. Like you don't want them to share things that are like, their most like deepest upsetting
No.
things. We want to build that trust over time. So we have to give it time. Like we don't have a choice, even if it, like I know your listeners just want to know what's going to happen. That's how I felt. You
Yeah.
just want to know what's going to happen, but like it just doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, you have to give it time. You really do.
You got to give it time and you got to
Yeah,
allow that time to see, like to really see and be
yeah,
honest with yourself. I love that. Like when, we talked about earlier, like
mhm,
if it's, if the guy is already showing you that it's not, like let's say, let's go back to like if you a woman that really wants to get married and you meet
yeah.
this guy, and I don't care if he's hot, ladies, and he literally says, no, I don't want to get married. Oh, he's not your guy.
Well, and the thing is, like, here's the thing. I think when you said don't lie to yourself, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to date that guy, have at her, but don't tell yourself he's going to marry you eventually. Like, don't, because you're just being, like, don't do that. He's already told you.
He's
And, like,
already
I
told
think the
you.
thing is, people hear these stories and they hear about that, that one time that happened. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sure. But like, don't wait around for that,
Exactly. Yeah,
right? Like, it doesn't
exactly.
really happen. That's like 1%. And
Yep.
like, the guy probably wasn't against marriage. It was probably like, oh, I'm not quite ready.
Oh,
I'm not,
not quite. Yes. Yeah.
right. And like, even that is like, okay, like, how long do you want to wait around? Right. But it's that
Yeah.
being honest. And there are lots of people. I always have to remind myself that too. Right. In the dating, it's like,
Totally.
there are lots of people. We get really honed in on like one or two sometimes. And it's like, even though you can't see the guy in front of you right now, there are lots of men in the world. Like, go out to a sports game or something and like just see that there's men. Like, it helps to know,
No, that's
right?
true. That's really good. So if you
Yeah.
are, let me ask you this. So for the listeners, if for the ladies that are single right now, and they're like, okay, so I'm listening to you ladies today, and this is making a lot of sense, right? They're like, okay, they're really resonating with all the things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But they also want to be able to apply something now into their lives during this time when they're single and they're looking for, let's say their partner or to marry someone or wherever they're at. And the majority
Yeah.
of the women that I actually do work with are looking for like a husband, like they're the person that they can share life with. So that's the majority. Not everyone, but that's just
Yeah.
the majority. So what advice, Robyn, I know you have so much, but just like right now, what advice would you give them? What can they do now?
Yeah. So I'm going to say this. They don't want to hear this
Okay, it's okay.
necessarily.
No, say it,
They're
girl.
like,
Say it.
tell me
Yeah.
I'm the man. But work on your other relationships, like on your friendships. And like if you have stuff with your parents or like with your kids. And I'm not saying that to like, don't focus on dating. It'll just happen one day. You need to also focus on dating.
Yeah.
But what happens is if we work on our relationship skills in these other areas, when you're going to start to like intuitively feel like how it feels to be treated well, right? So if I have really good friendships and I'm like, you know, my friends are supportive and they'll like, you know, maybe we'll have difficult conversations and I learn what that should feel like. Then when I date a man and he doesn't do that, there's like my body's like, nope.
Oh, Robyn, this is so good. This is so good. I haven't heard this. This is good.
Yeah. So I think that's the place. And you can date too, but like, yeah, focus on building the skills in those other relationships. And it will just help you like know then intuitively how to date and be with people.
Because then you can see like how healthy a relationship should be. And if you're with a guy, ladies, like listen, like again, if it should be the same. Like that's what I always say. It's literally like marrying or being committed to your best friend, lover. And I'm going to add the lover, you know what I mean? But that's
so true. Yeah.
That's what it really comes down to, because that your romantic partner, you should be able to feel completely safe with them and have that vulnerability and have that true connection. If you're not having that, then something's off like that. You know what I mean? Something's going on with you, something's going on with them, but that's what it should be. So what the advice that Robyn gave and focusing on already the current relationships that you have now and making sure that those current relationships are warm and fuzzy and you're getting that exchange, then that will actually help you not put up with, you know, men that are, you know, behaving poorly and you're starting to feel really weird and you're like, I don't know. No, that's your flag right there.
Yeah. It gives you that check-in. Like, would my friend do this? And the thing is too, I've like, no one's relationships are perfect.
No.
Like even in my friend, like I'm sure it's the same, right? It's like, there's always going to be, I don't want to say always issues. We're always learning and growing, right? Yeah. So I'm always like evaluating and learning and like having difficult conversations. I shouldn't say maybe that's like 5% of the time actually, right? Mostly it's good, but there's always learning. And so if you do that learning there, it's going to transfer over and just make it way easier. And you'll have that support system too. For like dating's hard and it goes really up and down. So it's important to have like a base of people when, you know, you need to like not hang out with that guy anymore, or you need to end things, then you have options for that connection instead of just being like, well, now I'm alone and lonely, and it makes it way harder.
Oh yeah, that's so true. That is so good. No, Robyn, like honestly, can you share also what you do and, you know, how you help people, you know, when it comes to matters of the heart?
Yeah, so I teach a lot. So really looking at like, how do we manage our own emotions and understanding that. And like that story that I gave about like, oh, wait, when I'm not thinking about this, I really help people see that a lot of the stories we have is a choice and give them tools for being able to do that, right? Because sometimes I know when I was really anxious, like I couldn't, like, you know, you hear that I would get advice from my friends, like just focus on that other thing.
Yes. Yeah.
You need to know it's an option, right? Like you can see, oh, this is a thing you can do, but learning it can be hard, right? Yeah. Like that's why people hire both of us is you need someone kind of on your side and guiding you through. And then also our relationship, like coach-client relationship, demonstrates a lot of healthy relationship things to you.
That's true.
So you start to hear like, hey, this is how I should be responding to myself, actually, right? And this is how then other people should be responding to me. And that helps you then weed out in dating those guys who aren't doing that. And it also helps you like help them by being like, no, this is how you should be responding, actually. Oh, like, can we work on this, right? Yes. Instead of just going along with it all the time.
Right. Like just, you have your own set of ways that you're going to do it. Not depending on them. You already know. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. And Robyn, seriously, how do they get in your world? What is the best place to find you?
Yeah. So Instagram. So at Relationship Coach Robyn on Instagram is where I usually hang out. I post workouts. I try to work out. I post stuff on there about relationships. Sometimes my cats. So if you like cats too.
You like cats too. Go to Robyn. No, Robyn's amazing, you
Yeah.
guys. And she really helps people. Like the work that she's doing is really helping so many people. And I just
Thank
love it. I
you.
love that you are doing what you're doing. And let me ask you this, Robyn, like, I feel like this is probably the fastest interview I ever had. Like it went so fast. Robyn, I can't
I
believe
did.
it.
Yeah.
It was so good. Like you were just honestly, you guys. I mean, she was just giving us so many nuggets here, so many nuggets here, so many things to think about. And what I love is that, love is available for any of us, you guys. Like seriously.
Yes.
Oh, talk about that, Robyn. It's available for us if it's a desire that we
Yes.
have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a human need.
Yes.
Right. We really need, like, that's why I went into this work. Cause I was like, we need to feel loved. It just affects all the areas of our life when we don't feel that. And you can feel loved. Like your relationships don't have to be awful. They really don't.
Yeah. And how is life for you now? Are you in a relationship, not in a relationship? What is it like?
Yeah. I've been dating a guy for a couple of years now. And it just, yeah, that's the thing is like it just feels so much lighter. Like,
Oh,
honestly, I think that's the biggest difference. It's like before there would be issues and I would be like, not okay, really. Right. Because it's like, you're trying to fix it and you're getting pulled in different directions. And I love that, like how you described it. It's like a relationship where I feel supported and it enhances my life. Like it actually makes it so I can go out and do this work
yes.
versus just being like consumed by that. Right. It's like, oh, there's a supportive environment and it helps me feel better, which is what relationships should do.
Absolutely. So you've been with your guy. Well, tell me something that you just absolutely just adore about him.
So he brings out, I can be a little bit serious.
Okay.
And so he is really good at bringing out my fun side, honestly. And that's what's nice too about relationships, right? Is when we have someone that kind of brings out those things about us. Like I can be quite playful and silly, but only in the right situations. So that's my favorite part is just getting to be very relaxed and playful and like, just that de-stress, right? Of like just getting to be me and just being like silly, really.
That's fantastic. And
yeah, that's my favorite thing.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing because that's what I want you ladies to hear. Because when you're in the relationship with the right person, right? And again, it doesn't matter if you've had relationships that worked out, didn't work out. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. But when you're in the relationship with the right person, you guys, it should feel just like she said. Like you should be able to like laugh and have fun and you should feel safe. My favorite word is warm and fuzzy.
That's another thing too. Do you know, like, is that like, and I can feel safe like that because there's that commitment.
Yes.
To be honest, like that really helps me feel like that because I don't have to worry because it's like he has expressed that, hey, I care about this relationship. I want to work on it. You're important to me. And I know that I'm not questioning that. So then I get to be that fun self. Like you really get to be who you want to be instead of this like stress and always working on stuff and like uncertain, right? It's like, oh, you can be this person who's relaxed because you have what you need.
Oh, yes, because you have what you need. So listen to that. So you guys, don't give up on love. Don't give up on hope because, if you do find yourself, like we just said, I want you to kind of really pay attention to the things that Robyn said today. And also, you don't have to do this alone. Like, honestly, ladies, like seriously, there's a lot of layers here. And sometimes, what you actually need is just some support. So you can bounce it off, with a professional and have that safety already. And, if Robyn is someone that you're really resonating, reach out to her, you guys. And, of course, you can always reach out to me. I'm here. We're actually here to help. So it doesn't matter, who you want to work with or who you reach out to, but definitely if that's something that you want to do, go for it. Get the help, right, Robyn? Like that's why we're doing what we're doing, right?
Yeah. And I learned from coaches. So, when I was talking about the things that I learned, it wasn't just that I was like, oh, aha, all of a sudden it was like, no, my coach was trying to teach me that over and over. And then I finally got it is what happened, right?
Yeah.
These skills are learned. I didn't just even read a book. It's like, you need someone to apply it to what you need. Right. And so often we're wrong actually about what we need in that.
Totally.
Right.
We can't see our blind spots, Robyn. I'm like,
totally. Yeah. We'll work on the wrong things sometimes. So it's so, that's why I do this now is because I needed that. I needed someone to help me. And so that's why I do it.
No, me too. No, Robyn,
Yeah.
and before I go, is there anything else that you would like to say that maybe something we didn't cover? Because I know that you and I can obviously talk forever. Like there's
Yeah, we
oh no,
could.
seriously, like, you and I, like I'm like, this is really one of the fastest podcasts I've ever done. And it's an hour. And I loved it. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to say, when we're ending this today?
I think just what you said, like about it's
Mhm.
possible for people. Like it
Yeah.
really is. Like I want them to know that it is possible. Like you should feel loved. Like
Yes.
it is really a skill. And then you can create that.
Yes, absolutely. Oh,
Mhm.
yes. Thank you from the
Yeah, thank
bottom of my
you.
heart for such an honest, real, authentic conversation today. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. This was awesome. And I really
Mhm.
appreciate you.
Me too. It was great.
It was great. All right. And till next time, cheers to great love.
That's a wrap. Wow. That was such a beautiful conversation about how we can choose how we look at things and how we can choose how we want to feel. And it's okay if somebody doesn't want us. We don't have to make that about us. The love that we give ourselves and the power to move on is that we will be okay if things don't work out. We will be okay if someone we are falling for doesn't want what we want. And that's absolutely okay. Because what I know to be true is that there is someone out there and is the perfect match for you. We have the power to move on. We have the power to meet and connect with other people who share our values and want to grow with us and want what we want. I promise there are great men out there and great love is available. Don't get stuck on the past. Move forward and believe that you deserve great love with the great man, and it's absolutely possible. You just have to believe. If you're loving this podcast and these incredible conversations, please hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. Don't miss an episode because each week I'll be bringing on guests and experts who will share their knowledge about love, dating, and relationships so you can apply it into your own life. I'll see you next week. And until then, cheers to great love.